I'd like to call to order the May 8th meeting of the Shelby Township Planning Commission. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Dallo?
Here.
Mr. Seco? Here. Ms. Casali? Here. Mr. Turner?
Here.
Mr. Opone?
Here.
Mr. Wozniak?
Here.
Chairman, we have a quorum.
Great. First item is approval of the agenda. I'm going to make one shift in moving the site plan number 16-44, Mike LaChurco, to the third item under the site plan. If there are no other.
Move with that change.
Support.
Moved by Turner, support by DeSico. All in favor?
Aye.
Next, approval of minutes from the April 24th meeting.
So move.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, so this evening we have three items, two site plans and a public hearing on a site plan. The first item we'll be dealing with the site plan number 17-09, Michael Magnoli, Crimson Court LLC. This is a re-review. Mr. Wynn, did you want to kind of just tee it up for us?
So you may recall this when John puts the plan on. If you could maybe John put the site plan on too. Yeah. This single-family development was part of a continuation or extension of Crimson Court, and there's a couple of drawings in the background information that show how this sets up with the rest of that square mile. At the last meeting, the question was raised, this is the last sort of end of that cul-de-sac, and is that too long? So I did verify with the fire marshal, and technically it exceeded their dimensions. He said, but Glenn, there's really no other practical way to get at this site. So we looked at, so I verified with the fire marshal he was comfortable with it. The second item was, what's the feasibility of extending that road to Van Dyke and, through that commercial? And that's maybe not feasible for a couple of reasons. I don't think you really want to feed an single-family project through a commercial site. And it might invite more cut-through traffic into that square mile. You have that whole square mile between Van Dyke and Mound and 25 and 26, and there are multiple subdivisions that are all interconnected with roads, and there are 6 access points to the major road, 3 from 25 Mile Road, 1 from Mound, and 2 from 26 Mile Road. So, technically you feasibly could do that. The concern would be, then are you going to invite more traffic into that neighborhood through those cul-de-sacs off Crimson by virtue of opening that up? So we don't think that's a good idea. We haven't seen that really happen in this community elsewhere. The concern about construction traffic would be our recommendation that they coordinate the construction so that the commercial site on Van Dyke would allow access to build those roads and put the utilities in. At some point there'll be normal construction traffic through the neighborhood, but the worst traffic is typically for construction purposes is when they're building the roads and installing the utilities. Other question was raised about building elevations. They've provided some and they have those available for review. So as a result of all of that, Mr. Chairman, I'm more comfortable with where we're at. The questions that were raised were by the public, I think, were legitimate, reasonable questions, and I'm satisfied that we've done our due diligence, and the plan that's been submitted is consistent with our normal development practices in this community.
Okay. If the petitioner wants to come up, get your name and address, please.
John DeLisla. I'm representing the developer Mike Magnoli, who just arrived. I'm with PEA 59255 Van Dyke, Washington Township. And we did come up with the same findings upon our review after the public hearing last time. Went and took a look at the different access points, and for sure, I think there's over 200 lots that may utilize any sort of residential connection you would make to Van Dyke, as opposed to going up to 26 Mile, making the 2 Michigan turnarounds to enter the sub from the north. So certainly that wouldn't accomplish what the resident was interested in doing and lessening or keeping to the existing count the traffic that goes through the sub now. But we have added some information. I'm going to flip one of the boards real quick. I think one of the first questions that was asked last time was the type of homes that we're going to propose in this development. And the developer has brought this information forward as opposed to putting it later in the process. And we've got one sample home that's there. You know, the price point on these is 375 and up, 375,000 and up. Square footage around 2,800, I believe. It'll be a mix of different homes, but again, this is just a sample to let everyone know that it's not going to be the $150,000 price point that they were concerned with. As to the access, I think Mr. Nguyen has covered everything with respect to the fire department and the secondary access for the residents. And with respect to the length of the cul-de-sac, again, it was driven by the shape of the parcel. And I think we'll find that it's a little bit shorter than indicated. The Department of Roads may take it to the center of the cul-de-sac, which may take us just slightly over the 600. But the stationing and the construction detail will come at the next level if we move beyond the preliminary approval. Another concern with the length of the cul-de-sacs is typically the long water main lead that's typically ending with a fire hydrant. We are going to provide that second water main connection out to Van Dyke through the commercial site, so the pressure won't be an issue. We are in receipt of a letter from the Department of Roads, too, indicating that if the fire marshal is fine with the length of it, then they are as well. So I would open it up to any questions you may have.
Okay. To the board, any questions? Okay, thank you. At this time, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Turner.
I move to approve the preliminary condominium plans for the Crimson Court site condominiums, site plan number 17-09, subject to the submission of a revised plan addressing all department comments.
Support.
Can I, Mr. Chair, can I add something to that?
Sure.
Should we not state the construction traffic through
I was going to
Van
ask
Dyke
Glenn
as
about
well?
that, yeah. Should we put in a motion that we're going to add a temporary construction access off Van Dyke?
I would request that, yes. I think it's appropriate.
And we would be agreeable to that. We've spoken with the developer of the retail piece, and he's willing to work with us and come to some terms.
Okay. I'll add that to the motion.
Thank you.
Okay, to the supporter?
Support.
Okay. If there are no other questions, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Turner?
Yes.
Commissioner DeSico?
Yes.
Commissioner Dalu?
Yes.
Commissioner Casale?
Yes.
Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Commissioner Pone?
Yes.
Commissioner Wozniak?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is a public hearing, site plan number 15-05, Joe Cardona. I'll ask the secretary to read the notices published.
Charter Township of Shelby, notice of public hearing. Notice is hereby given that the Planning Commission for the Charter Township of Shelby, Macomb County, Michigan, has received a request for approval of the following planned unit development. Applicant Joe Cardona, Lakeside Boulevard Townhomes LLC, 2145 Crooks, Suite 210, Troy, Michigan 48084. Proposed use, 32 multiple family residential units, part of Lakeside Boulevard Townhome, site plan number 17-05, PUD-1. Location, north side of Lakeside Boulevard between Shaner Road and Hayes Road. Sidwell number 23-07-36-400-084. Legal description is as follows. The Planning Commission will meet on Monday, May 8th, 2017, at 7 p.m. in the Shelby Municipal Building, 52700 Van Dyke, Shelby Township, Michigan, 586-726-7243, for the purpose of holding a public hearing on the planned unit development application. The application for planned unit development and the site plan may be examined at the Planning and Zoning Department in the municipal building, Monday through Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Written comments may be submitted to the Planning Commission at the above address prior to the hearing. Oral comments will be heard during the public hearing. This notice is provided pursuant to the requirements of Michigan Public Act 110 of 2006 as amended. Shelby Township Planning Commission, Jerome Moffitt, Chair, Raquel Moore, Secretary. Publication date was April 23rd, 2017, in the Source newspaper. There were 149 property owners, and 2 applicants were notified by first-class mail on April 21st, 2017.
Mr. Kirk, did the publication meet all legal requirements?
Yes, it did.
Okay, thank you. Could you explain the uses under the present zoning and if this request is appropriate?
The property is zoned in the C5 district, which is a multi-use district and multiple family unit district, so this is a permitted use. However, C5 is a planned unit development district, so this is why we're having our hearing today, is because of the PUD.
Okay, thank you. The format for the public hearing will be as follows. The petitioner or representative will come up and state what they're requesting and the reasons for it. Commissioners will then ask questions. I'll then open up to the public for any comments, questions that you have. I'll then bring the petitioner back to answer and respond to those questions/comments. So at this time, if I could have the petitioner.
Good
And
evening.
get your name and address, please.
Joseph Cardana, Lakeside Boulevard Homes, 2145 Crooks Road, Troy, Michigan, 48084. We come before you with Phase 2 of our Lakeside Boulevard Townhomes project. We're going to call it the Lofts at Lakeside. We plan to do a little different unit style than we've typically been building in the area. It's going to be a 3-story building that has 1-bedroom studio-style apartments. They're going to rent anywhere from probably $950 to about $1,050 a month. They will not have an attached garage, but we have ample parking around the site. There will be some common elements in the building, like shared spaces, such as a community room and like a common lobby where people can rent if they needed to have a larger party space or something like that. Our site has been extremely successful in Phase 1. We are almost completely leased, even without all our construction being done, but we anticipate Phase 1 to be done by August and fully leased. We have a cooperative deal with Lifetime Fitness next door, so we offer a discounted rate to all of our tenants to use the facilities, which offers more amenities than anyone could ever imagine putting in a community. So we think it's a great fit. It's a little different unit mix than that what's been going in the township, offers a little different price point, and we think it'll be a very good product for the area.
Okay, thank you. To the board, any commissioners have any questions?
I just have a quick question. This is a pretty easy one, I think. I'm curious, how much will the rent be? Do you have any idea?
About $950 to $1,050.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, hearing none. This is the only public hearing the Planning Commission will hold on this request. All remarks will be entered into the record for Township Board evaluation. We are a recommending body, and the Township Board will evaluate our recommendation, which is the legislative body. The Township Board will make the final decision on this request. At this time, anyone is welcome to come and offer opinion, ask any questions. Okay, sir. I need you to come up to the microphone. If you could state your name and address, please.
John Vermeulen, Shelby Township trustee. How do you
Sir,
predict what
sir,
the,
would you address the board, then we'll ask.
how does the person predict exactly what the rent will be at that time?
Okay.
Can you sign in, John? John, excuse me. Sorry. Would you mind signing in right there? Thank you. Sorry.
Okay. Does anyone else wish to ask any questions or comment? Going twice? Then I need you to come on up if you.
My name's Doris Bouchel, and I happen to live across the street in Harvard Oaks.
An address in Harbor Oaks?
Pardon?
Your address in Harbor Oaks?
14868 Lakeside Boulevard.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Again, ask.
I'm a rental as well,
Okay.
but I have a garage, and it's a 2-bedroom. So I guess price pointing wise, if these are studios, and you say that it does not have a garage,
I think they're one bedroom.
one
is what they're
bedrooms.
proposing.
that I think it's marketable. It's a good price. for the area and a going rate, because I was also looking at apartments as well when I was looking to live in the area. So the price point that you have on it, I think, is a good price. But other than that, I mean, I came here for some other reasons.
Okay.
I've never been to a city township meeting before, so I didn't know how to approach bringing up other items to bring on the agenda, but I guess it's something we can talk about later.
We'll have a public comment at the end.
Okay.
And
All right.
you 3 minutes to.
And I need to sign here.
Yeah, if you would, please. Okay. Pete, unless you got something on this one?
Sitting back there.
Mr. Wynn.
Chairman, just as kind of a bigger, before I go into the specific comments, you may recall this original plan that was done back in 1996 had very little in terms of diversity of units. They were all envisioned, Mr. DiLorenzo, the original developer, envisioned 3-story rentals, some townhouses, some live work, basically 1,200 units, mostly the same product. And you can see what's happening here with Redwood and Mr. Caradana's first phase and this other phase, and what Mr. Snyder's brought in on behalf of his client across the street. You have quite a bit of diversity, and I think the market's absorbing that pretty rapidly. We met with the Redwood people today, and they're all leased out from what they built, which is a good sign. And again, that's only going to help the commercial on Market Street and Lakeside, in that area, by having a good residential mix in here. And I think Mr. Caradana's plan is incredibly creative. It's a different kind of product. From a site plan standpoint, there's, if you look at on page 2 of our review, there's 6 items that are just site plan details, parking, dimensional details, and space, surface details. The only issue we wanted to ask Mr. Caradana to consider is the elevations are kind of creative, but never called out materials. So we may want to consider maybe, I drove out again and looked at his other buildings today, maybe at least some continuity in terms of colors or something to kind of make the project sort of visually coherent. Even though it's tucked in the back, I think it would be useful to at least have something on there so, when you're driving the project, it looks like has some design continuity. Not to take away from the design of the product, because it's a real unique, something we don't have in this community. And I think, again, if you look at what our consultants have told us about our future master plan, we need more diversity in housing because we have a more diverse population than we did before. And I think it's nice to see the private market respond to that in a very creative, positive way. The only other comment, this was something that our engineer raised about the density is greater than the master plan density for the sanitary sewer district. I asked her about that today, and she said they're revising the sanitary sewer plan to take into account all that new development. I said, is that something we should hold this project up for? And she said, no. They're doing that concurrently. They were aware of this project, and they're moving forward to redesign their sanitary plan to make sure it accommodates all this new development. So we're in a position to recommend favorable consideration, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, great, thank you. Petitioner. So the lone question is on how did you choose rents?
Yep, the rents are based on a price per square foot. It's a pretty common formula. Typically in Shelby, they're between $1.05 to $1.10 a square foot. We feel we might get a little bit higher price per square foot for this style unit because we offer the amenities of the building that sometimes get counted in there and the uniqueness of the building. And to address Mr. Wynn's comment about the colors, we definitely will make sure our panel systems are prefabricated like hardy board style cement board, but we can get the burgundy that's shown on our drawing may not be perfect, but it's intended to match the brick color on our existing buildings now. So, and same thing with the siding panels. So it'll be the same colors as the front buildings, just different materials, like a hardy backer and a hardy siding. So.
Okay. Any final questions for the petitioner? Okay. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Our recommendation this evening must be based on the following standards: compatibility with adjacent land uses, consistent with and promote the intent and purpose of the special land use, compatibility with the natural environment, consistent with the capacities of public services and facilities affected by the proposed use, protect the public health, safety, and welfare, and the adequacy of public access to the site. We may recommend approval, we may disapprove the request, or we could table it to evaluate the information further. And at this time,
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Dalu?
For a motion. We recommend approval site plan application 17-05 for Lakeside Boulevard Townhouses, subject to the submission of a revised site plan addressing all the department comments.
Support.
Okay, moved by Dalu, support by Apone. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none. Commissioner Dalu?
Yes.
Commissioner Apone?
Yes.
Commissioner Wozniak?
Yes.
Commissioner Turner? Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Commissioner Casale?
Yes.
Commissioner DeSico?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Good luck. Okay, finally, site plan number 16-44, Mike LaTurco.
Thanks.
Hello, Pete Snyder, Urban Land Consultants, 8800 23 Mile Road, Shelby Township, Michigan, representing the applicant, Mr. Michael LaTurco.
And what are you requesting this evening?
And we are requesting site plan approval of what we call Stony Creek Cove, which is a piece of the Stony Creek communities. I'm going to switch to the mobile mic because, as you know, I like to roll a little bit.
Should be.
All right. Oh, there we go. Now I can hear me. The site is located on the east side of Shelby Road, south of 26 Mile Road. Again, most people who've been to this site know it by coming in off 26 Mile Road, going through Stony, what we call Stony Creek Apartments, next to the Cascades, and then there's an open piece at the back that's been in soybeans for a few years. There actually is a piece of the parcel that has frontage out to Shelby Road. On this drawing, it's shown in the light green. The dark green is the area that I'm bringing you a site plan for. We are still working on potential layouts for this piece of property. I don't even think we have the building that is going to work on this yet, but we're still working on this piece of property. I had hoped to bring it in together because I like, again, as you'll see from a later board, this is all that's left there on the northwest side of Macomb Orchard Trail, all the way up to 26 Mile Road. This is the only piece that's left. So I'd like to get that in there, but it didn't come in with this site plan, so I'm sorry about that. The darker green area here is the part that we've got site planned. Essentially, these are 10-unit buildings. They're fairly similar to the buildings that were approved at Ansbury, with one exception. These have 2-car garages, and in order to do that, they needed to be longer on the ends, and we had to bring a garage, 2 garage doors out, what we call the rear. Now, on this layout, what you think might be the front, which is the area closest to the drive, visually is actually the rear of the building. This is the visual front here, facing the open space. It's a fairly practical layout. We're using Stony Creek Drive, has been used for the apartments and for the Cascades immediately north of us. The site slopes fairly prominently towards the Macomb Orchard Trail. We've got our detention ponds down here. The road layout interconnects as much as we can. There's one connection right here into Cascades. There was a stub road left from Cascades that is connected up here as well for circulation. The reason we're looking at this, which is, I mean, it's on your plan, but it's a little hidden. Phase 1, what Mr. LaTurco intends as Phase 1 is above my hand. It's these 10 buildings up here. 10 buildings, 10 units apiece. That's 100 units. That'll certainly give him a chance to get going out here. What he intends to do with Phase 1 is to put in an access road out to Shelby. Now, we've been back and forth with the township about that access road. Again, if we could have brought in a master plan, fully master plan and a site plan here, we'd know exactly where the final road was going to go. We don't. And it's going to be used for construction for all of this section of it, and probably working his way out similar to some other projects he's done. So what we propose to do is to put in a temporary turnaround at the end of where Stony Creek Drive is right now, and then to maintain a gravel access road to the standards of the fire department, not just a whatever road, but an actual, gravel fire access road out to Stony Creek, because that really is that's the only other access that a fire truck might have to get in there if for some reason the Stony Creek Drive were to be blocked up to 26 Mile Road. The architecture, of course, is very nice, as we've come to expect. I've got just the board of the rear of the building, figuring that's the least attractive just because of the two roll-up garage doors. But again, it's very nice architecture. It's a nice layout. There are some units that are completely downstairs. The majority of the units are up. There are 4 units down below, and there are 6 above. They all have 2-car garages because we think that's where the market's going to go. There's lots of open space. You can see, I've talked about the road connection because I know that was in your planner's comments. I'm going to take a few minutes to talk about the density, because that, if you look at this and you take 38 acres times R7, you don't end up with the number of units that we have. So in order to understand the density, you have to go all the way back to the late 1980s, early 1990s. I'm going to turn this so north is actually up. This blue piece, ignore it. It's not part of this plan. It is part of my current proposal, but this is just for clarity's sake here. This is an 85-acre development that was called Stony Creek Apartments that was approved. It was an approved site plan. We've got 1989 on the site plan approval for that. Through the early 90s, this orange section got developed. There's 240 apartment units in here. That got developed. Mike developed that in conjunction with a couple of partners that he had. So Mike owns 50%. The other partners own 50%. The remaining apartments never got developed. If you fast forward a little bit to the early 2000s, Mike and his partners decided they're going to stay joint on the part that's already developed, but the balance of it, they're going to split and part ways. So what they did is they took the overall remaining density, which is, it was approved at 652 units, 240 developed, leaving 412 units, and this 2002 site plan sort of apportions those. 197 here, in a development called the Cascades, which Anthony Lombardo eventually ended up developing. 12 units over here, 203 remaining on this piece of property right here. Again, the blue piece of property just hanging around for reference. Excuse me. So another thing I want to note or point out on this, the Cascades property has all of the open space, 7 acres of it, for the entire section over here. Again, if this open space would have all fallen in down here in the cove portion, we probably wouldn't even be having this conversation because the math would work. But it doesn't. This is 7 acres open space that was part of the piece of land that was given for the Cascades. Here's the third board. This is actually an exhibit. When we did this, of course, the Planning Commission, the planner, and other people wanted to make sure that the amenities in Stony Creek Apartments were paid for, there was something in place. This is a long private road. So there is an agreement in place that apportioned what areas might access the Stony Creek Drive, how many units they were, and shares the maintenance accordingly. Again, here's Stony Creek Village Apartments, the first. Here's Cascades. Pink is still the open space. This is the developed portion. Here is Stony Creek Cove, the first piece, with the remaining 203 units from the original approval. Here is the blue piece which is 15 acres. Again, we just plugged that in times 7 units an acre, added that density together for the 308. This piece down here is the remainder left after Shelby Park Manor North. Again, it's technically part of this piece of property, but we're not bringing in a site plan for that portion as of yet. We're hopeful it's coming soon, but there's nothing yet. So at the end of the day, we end up with undeveloped here, no site plan on it yet. The 203 units left over from this original 85-acre approval that was split and apportioned, and then the 15 acres at straight up times 7 units per acre. So we're showing 308 units on this 38 acres, and we've just done the calculation. This is 19 acres times, I think that's R9. So that's the leftover. So again, I apologize for being a little long-winded in that, but there's a historical basis for the density that's just not, it's not apparent if you just look at this plan. I don't think there's anything else I got to talk about. If you have questions, if I went through it too quick, certainly I'm sure you'll ask.
Actually, maybe my questions, maybe Mr. Nguyen, you weren't here for this.
I was here for the Cascades, but not for the original,
So, I mean, is the argument that we're to look at the full original development and not the indivial pieces of the development?
We're still looking at the individual pieces, but the density picture is based on that overall number.
Yeah, but typically done, with, a type product that was considered back in the late 80s, early 90s, and that's now evolved,
Right.
How does that impact, does that impact the density?
Well, I would only tell you two things that are in my recollection. Number one is the property if I can go back, the zoning hasn't changed. It's been multiple family. I think it's been R7. We did change the ordinance a number of years ago. The density was calculated by number of bedrooms and the type of unit. It was a very convoluted way of commuting density. Now we just do it on a strict unit, number of units per acre. I don't know that that difference would have made all that much difference if you calculated one way or the other. But this reminds me of almost a little bit of a couple of other projects where it's gone back and we've established a number of units and backed our way in. As we've gone through, it's changed based on the product. So, if you want me to run through the numbers again, I'd be happy to try to do that. One thing I think is important, you have open space that was provided is part of that overall, but it's kind of in phase one. They are still providing open space based on our current calculations in his phase. So, they're actually providing more open space than they had to, which, I'm reasonably comfortable with that. I just thought we needed some explanation on the record because it predates my history here. And, when I just do the number calculation, it doesn't work.
Again, I like what Mr. LaChurco is doing in that whole area. It's been a nice product. It seems to be has a good absorption. Probably the biggest concern I have is the traffic, and I'm happy that there's a temporary road, but I think I'd be happier if it's there's a plan to make that a permanent road, because I am concerned living in that area and traveling that area a lot. Sort of the entrance onto 26 Mile from around Stony Creek, that entrance is right there, and there's some blind spots there. It's and if we're increasing adding 300 units that all are going to come out of that one entrance, that potentially could create a hazard. Much happier that there is some access. There would be potential access off of Shelby.
So, can I address that?
Please.
So, there's two elements of the access. The first one is emergency vehicle, because you want to make sure there's two ways of getting in and out of here. And I think that temporary construction road serves that purpose, particularly when you figure the fire station's just a bit south of here, off of, is it Mound Road or Shelby Road? Shelby Road. So it's convenient access. The second aspect of it is what you get to, Mr. Chairman. At some point, we need to have permanent access from the south to all of this development. I guess the point remains, what's the triggering point? When do we reach that? What tips us over to requiring that? I don't know the answer to that. I wouldn't feel too comfortable going too much further. But when we met on last week to talk about this, The suggestion was, let's I hate to, defer this decision, but I think it wouldn't be inappropriate to defer this decision to 12 months, 18 months, and then say, let them get started, and then say when are we going to require this. That gives them a little time to decide what they're doing with the R9 piece, because again, where that road goes is going to depend on what they want to do down there, and give them a little chance to do that. From a practical standpoint, they're not going to be able to break ground this year, probably. Finish site plan, you got engineering. Realistically, I think Pete would tell you probably candidly that you're not seeing units built this year. I would like to say let's revisit this, sometime late 2018, and then see at what point we're gonna require that. So we're kind of allowing them to go forward, but saying at some point you're going to have to do this. And I think the pressure is on a little bit on the applicant to kind of decide what they want to do for that southerly piece.
You have any other comments?
I do not.
All right.
Thank
To
you.
the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Turner.
I'd like to talk about this density for a moment, Mr. Wynn. I know it was approved in '89 at X density. Are we obligated to maintain that density? Because one of the things that caught my eye was the open space. And you did mention he has open space provided, but most of it seems to be on the north, and I'm wondering if we went to an actual R7 density on this portion of the property, we would get more open space and reduce the congestion in the area. Are we obligated to the original density based on what we have?
I think it's fair way to, I think it's fair to acknowledge what they had originally approved. I would tell you that under the new plan, they've provided the required amount of open space for this project based on our current calculations. So we're not giving them credit for the open space up north. I've actually done the calculations, and they've identified some areas in that green that are meeting the open space requirement. So this one stands on its own for open space.
Oh, okay.
Which made me feel a little more comfortable.
Right.
Because you wonder then, what part of the ordinance are we bumping up against that would be solved if they lowered the density? And they're not really, they've met most of the standards. There's a couple little minor things.
Okay, thank you.
I would like, I think, as part of any approval, that we get a narrative from Mr. Snyder and put it in the file. That way we have that record. That way somebody comes beyond us, past us, and say, here's how this was done.
This wasn't.
For the applicant, do you have any comments about that proposed path at the south end of the development? Yes, what is that?
So, yeah, I didn't talk about that in my main presentation. When we brought this up with Mr. LaChurco, actually it was Mr. Wright's idea, it wasn't mine. He said, hey, we've got the gas corridor running right through there. We've got the path sidewalk, really, on Shelby Road going into the Metro Park. We've got Macomb Orchard Trail here, and we've got a strip of open space, Consumers Power Easement. So similar to what's along the north edge of Briarwood or in other places, wouldn't it be a good idea to get another pathway connection between Shelby Road here, this is a half-mile north of the connection at 25, over to the Macomb Orchard Trail. So we're showing that on there. Mr. Litchrick was very clear. He's not going to pay for it. I think that we've been in discussions with the Parks and Rec and some of the Trail Commission. I think Mr. Litchrick well enough to know that when he says he's not going to pay for it, that's what he means right now. But there is, he likes that trail a lot. He really does. So at the end of the day, we're showing a potential trail through there by others. I think it'd be great for, personally, it'd be great for me. I use that area. So I just think it's one of those kind of right things to do for a planning sake, and the time to do it is as you're dealing with these pieces of property. So that's why it's there.
And then on the west side of the light green area, it shows a partial sidewalk. Is that correct? Or yeah, right there.
There is actually currently a sidewalk from 25 all the way up Shelby Road, and then joins to the trail that goes into the park.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Dalla.
Is the light green and the dark green obviously the same owners at this moment, right? I got confused with this.
Yeah, and it doesn't surprise me that you're a bit confused. For some reason, on the assessing rolls, these show up as the same parcel ID number. They are the same piece of property, even though they're bisected by Consumers Power.
So my question to that, if the light green is an R9, why don't they start developing that piece before they go to that and build the temporary roads and then,
And that too is a good question, and here's the answer. He knows that he can't really develop this piece of property using Stony Creek Drive as construction traffic. He's got to come in off this piece of property somewhere, okay? And he intends to do that, so he's not, he's got 240 apartment units, he's got 197 condo units in the Cascades, and it's a 24-foot wide road for, call it close to a half a mile back to get there. So he's got to bring his construction traffic through this way. He knows that, and it makes sense to start here and build his way out that way so that he's not having trouble with residents in this area as he's building.
Right.
And to be completely candid, he really hasn't figured out a building or a product that he wants here. I've got a layout with the Shelby Park Manor North building used on that. We've got a couple other buildings. This building doesn't work on it. We know that. There's too much topography, and it's R9 instead of R7. So we're still working that out.
is there any chance the road that is in the green light is going to be changed?
This road?
Yeah.
Definitely. I would say that it would almost certainly be in a different location when it's finalized. Which is why we'd like to defer, paving it and putting curb along it as long as possible. Another thing that Mr. Wynn talked about in our meeting last week was sort of perhaps an incentive from the Planning Commission, a time frame to get a site plan on that.
So obviously, in one time, you're going to have two roads going to that project because you can't close the temporary road to build an actual road. So you're going to have two roads in one time to access the property.
That may be.
Mr. Chairman, that's a good point Mr. Dallow made. At some point, he may have to invest twice, because you can't take construction traffic and your other traffic for the new development. But, that's not impractical. That's I think that's a reasonable way to do it at some point. We suggested, after meeting with Mr. Snyder last week, I'm prepared to recommend approval of this with them coming back in 18 months with a revised plan. We had jokingly talked about 2 years, but I won't be here in 2 years. So I didn't think that was fair. But we thought 18 months, that gives us a chance to come back and revisit it. And that's would coincide with some construction probably occurring and some occupancy, and it's a good time to revisit that. I think it's reasonable to expect that Mr. LaChurco should make some determination as to market and what product would fit there within the next 18 months.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
I just have a quick question for Mr. Wynn, and I'm not sure if it's, something that you can answer. My question is this: if there's two separate parcels, site plans, but yet we have one tax ID number, but they're two different zoning classes as far as R7, R9, why, at what point, does it just remain just one tax ID?
I don't think it matters that much because the parcels are almost physically separated by the consumer's property. So they stand alone as almost separate development entities. That actually doesn't complicate it. It might make it a little easier.
Oh.
Otherwise, you're right. A split zoning would complicate it, but this case it doesn't
Okay,
because of where the boundary line falls.
okay. Thank you.
That's a good question, though. Go.
Anyone else? Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Turner.
I move to recommend approval of site plan number 16-44 for Mike Luchurco, Stony Creek Cove multiple family, subject to the submission of a revised site plan addressing all department comments and, should I put this, and a concrete date of a site plan for the rest of the property within 18 months.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask one more?
Sure.
Could suggest we get a narrative describing the density.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, I would sure.
Thank
Support.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
Sorry. As far as the motion, are we just assuming then that there's access point, that we're going to have a road then to Shelby Road on this?
Yeah, that,
So that's a for sure thing?
yes, absolutely.
Okay.
The temporary, the construction
Temporary,
road.
for sure.
It's,
And
okay.
then 18 months from now, we're going to revisit
Okay.
it. Or
Yeah.
someone's gonna
I just want to make sure that it's
No,
on the
no,
record.
absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
Any other questions on the motion? Hearing none. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Turner?
Yes.
Commissioner Rapone?
Yes.
Commissioner Wozniak?
Yes.
Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Commissioner Casale?
Yes.
Commissioner DeSico?
Yes.
Commissioner Dalu?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Good luck. Planning Director's Report, Mr. Nguyen.
Well, just our administrative approvals last month, we had 13 sign applications and 1 temporary use permit. And we're starting to count down the days in which the master plan period where we have to wait for comments, that's coming to a close. So at the next meeting, I should give you an idea when we can hold our public hearing. Tomorrow, the board has a work session. We're going to just go over the PowerPoint that we presented earlier to the Planning Commission, so they're on board and understand the scope of the plan, too. So.
Very good. Now at business from the floor. If you wanted to address it, you need to come on up. Yep, business from the floor. So we got 3 minutes. I'll get your name and address again, please.
Doris Bouchel, 14868 Lakeside Boulevard.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm new to the neighborhood, so it's been about maybe 5 weeks living just off of Lakeside Boulevard. I'm wondering, number one, if you have anything to do with like handling noise ordinances, like vehicles with decibels too high with their engines and whatnot. Sounds like a racetrack, really, really loud. I
There
don't
are code
know how they
enforcement
handle
folks and
noise
Mr. Nguyen-
ordinances, or if that's something you take
Yeah,
up with.
there's a code enforcement.
Like, do they come and like register the
Okay,
decibels?
Mr.
or
Nguyen?
They
whatnot?
can, depending
And
on.
then
you
come
know,
and ticket?
I think the best thing to do is maybe tomorrow, if you send me an email, kind of give me some of the specifics, and I'll ask our code enforcement and our police department to investigate.
All right, that's great. And then part of that same issue would be as well, if they are speeding and treating that street, that 1 mile from Hayes to Shaner, where Costco, that street from Costco does not have a stoplight. I think it encourages people to race through, as well as when I come out of Costco and turning left to get onto Lakeside Boulevard, sometimes it's virtually impossible because the line is so backed up, and all that through traffic that goes, that 1 square mile doesn't allow for traffic. I'm wondering if there's ever going to be
Maybe
any
a traffic-
stoplight there rather
traffic
than a
circle?
stop sign having a traffic light there,
Well,
or even a timed
Yeah.
flashing red or something that allows
Yeah.
for turning at certain times a day so that it's not so backed up.
There's an issue that part of that's a private road, so there's a public and a private road, so it's
Right.
kind of created, it absolutely, we're aware of that issue, and we've tried
So
to.
those two issues are kind of,
Yeah.
They're related, and in
Related,
fact, and as
right.
part of our new plan, we've acknowledged that and even offered some suggestions, so it's something we'll be addressing.
okay. And then lastly, across the street from where this gentleman is doing his apartment complex, there's a parcel of land on the south side that is empty right behind that shopping area. Do they have that zoned for anything?
Which piece?
It's right in the
behind
corner,
Costco?
it's on the southeast corner of Lakeside Boulevard and Market Street. And we've talked to the developers about that site. There's no plans been submitted yet.
Just because I have a suggestion, because everything is so like commercialized, and then with the buildings, wondering if there's any like plans for like, if there's even a small little park in the area, because some of those condos, I'm sure, have older people that might have grandchildren, as well as families that live, it's all families in there, that maybe it could be zoned like a park area. There's not enough nature. All I see is buildings, and a few little trees, but no nature, and it looks kind of ugly looking at all the backs of those buildings as well, that if you had some nature and a place for family, that would be a nice zoning area to have something there, so, but, suggestion.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, and I'm already signed it.
Thank you. Mr. Dalu?
With that, Mr. Chairman, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.